Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you are currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps along your journey. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now, let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Did you know there is a war going on to capture our attention? The most valuable real estate in the world is in our own head and in our own heart. The most valuable real estate in the world is in our own head and in our own heart. Let me explain. Last year, a 30-second advertisement for the Super Bowl cost over $4 million. And this year's Super Bowl, who knows, it'll be even higher than that. But a 30-second advertisement cost more than $4 million. There is a war going on to capture our attention. For our attention, our minds, our hearts. Marketers tell us that we are bombarded by about 3,000 messages a day. Messages telling us that we should look a certain way, that we should think a certain way, and that we should do something, trying to get us to act or behave in such a way. They are trying to capture our attention. The Harvard Business Review did a study a while back about the distracted culture that we're living in. And in the results of this study, it showed that the modern worker today is shifting their focus between tasks, shifting their focus from one task to another task, anywhere between 300 to 500 times in an average day, which didn't even include smartphones. So escalate that number. Shifting our focus from one task to another task hundreds and hundreds of times a day, which is leading to about a 30% productivity rate. We are distracted, we are scattered, and there is a war at every second and every moment of the day of what's going to get our attention. It makes me think of a boss at a company that I was serving, that I'd spoken for and then was consulting with their team and their organization. And I remember reflecting with this executive leader. And I was sitting there with her, and she was reflecting back on her experience as the leader in this big organization. And she reflected on the idea, the feedback that she had received, that employees, people that worked with her and for her and under her and a part of her team and her organization, feedback she received from them was that they would come into her office. And in fact, all day long, people were cycling in and out of her office looking for her support and her encouragement, her ear, but that their experience was that it often fell on deaf ears because she wouldn't even look up at them when they came into her office. She would stay sitting behind her desk, typing away on her computer, and she would listen to them, and she would nod, and she would respond to them. But all the while, the employees' experience was that they were talking at her, and there she was trying to accomplish more things than she could, typing on the computer, looking at the screen, and yet still trying to listen and respond to the employees that were coming into her office and looking for her support, her encouragement, her ear. She was distracted. She was disconnected. She was not attentive to their needs. Her attention was divided. And yet as she realized this feedback that she got, and she started to think about her own day-to-day operations and reflecting on her role as the leader and the role that she plays in creating the culture there and the way that she supports her team and lifts up her team and helps align them around the mission and where they're trying to go next, she realized she was failing in that attempt, or at least not being as effective as she knew she could be as a leader, because her attention was divided. And then she started to change the way that she operated, the way that whoever was in front of her, whatever was the highest priority for that day, was going to get her attention. And all of a sudden, the morale on the team, the effectiveness of her role as a leader, and the performance and effectiveness of the company began to rise. I remember one morning running out of the house when I was running off to a bunch of meetings, and I had quickly gotten dressed, and I, of course, was in a hurry and rushing around, and, my wife and young family, people were running in all directions, getting themselves ready. And I remember, being dressed and grabbing breakfast and my coffee and running around busy, grabbing, my computer bag, my, items that I was going to run out the door with, when all of a sudden I felt a little tug on my leg. And I looked down, and it was my daughter Brooke at the time, who was younger, of course, than she is now, but of, a few years old. And in my rush around and our hecticness and the scatteredness of that morning of getting out the door for everybody going in the directions that they needed to go, there she was tugging on my leg. And I realized that perhaps the most important move I was going to make all day, when I get aligned around what my ultimate priorities are, is that my most important move all day was going to be, as I felt that tug on the leg, is to turn. And whereas I looked at my watch, I was in a hurry, I needed to get out the door, there were infinite number of things I did where I could have just raced right past it, I realized that the best move was to look my daughter in the eyes, to take a moment to get down on my knees so that I could look her right in the eyes, to let her know I'm attentive, I'm with you, I'm listening. You are the most important thing in this moment. It was the poet Mary Oliver, the wonderful poet, and whose words speak to us in so many different ways, that reminded us. She said this. She said, "This is the first, wildest, and wisest thing that I know. That the soul exists, and it is built entirely out of attentiveness. That the soul exists and is built entirely out of attentiveness. What we give our attention to on a day-to-day basis, what we give our eyes to, our hearts to, our attention to, that's what we end up creating around us." And so in this week coming up of Thanksgiving, a time where we pause once a year to give thanks, although hopefully we are celebrating and taking time to express gratitude and think about what we're grateful for and give thanks all the days of the year. I try my best to practice that myself and try to instill that, and none of us are perfect, but try to do that within teams and organizations, and making sure that along the journey to continuously improve and progress, that we want to make sure that we pause and are grateful for the journey we're on, and grateful for everything that we have around us, even as things are imperfect and or change. And so in this week of Thanksgiving, it's been interesting, and I invite you to think about this too, is what are those things that you're paying attention to? How do you turn your eyes and your mind and your heart to gratitude, to giving thanks? And even though there's a war going on to capture our attention, what is it that you want to give your attention to today, this week, this month, this quarter, this year? So a few reflection questions or some things to step back and ponder this week. I invite you to think about for your own journey and how you're thinking about where you are in your life, or as a leader, or the culture that you're trying to create with the people around you, and whatever's most important to you in your work or life. I invite you to think about these questions. What needs your attention right now in your work, your relationships, your life? What needs your attention? Not wants your attention, but what needs your attention? What are you grateful for? What is it that you have as you pause today and this week? What are those things that you're truly grateful for? In a week of giving thanks, how can you give your full attention to the people and things that you're most grateful for? How can you make sure that you, in all the distractions in the war for our attention, that you give yours to the people, to the projects, to the things that are most important to you? If there's a war for our attention, what will you give yours to? This is a reminder that there are plenty of things trying to steal your attention every moment of every single day. What needs your attention? And how will you give your attention to gratitude? Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast platform or social media platform you're using, and share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of this conversation. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or this kind of development would add value to your team or organization, we hope you'll contact us at www.jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.